shortly, but first we start with the big news this hour. Even as the United States began its first public trial in a long time over charges of Russia's interference with last year's presidential elections, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has hit back and says the allegations are simply false. In a strong statement and his first on the issue since Trump took office, Putin says there was no possibility of Russian involvement in the U.S. elections and that those in Washington were simply dragging him in what he is calling a political squabble. Meanwhile, the Senate Intelligence Committee started a public hearing in the matter and is likely to question several people, including Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
Когда-то Рейган, дискутируя по поводу, по-моему, налогов, обращаясь к американцам, сказал: «Читайте по губам». No.
All right, to get more perspective on this story, we go straight to the United States, where we're joined by professor as well as security analyst Arun Vishwanath, joining us from Buffalo, New York. Arun, thanks for joining us with regards to this. The first time that Putin has actually talked about this whole situation with Trump. We've heard all these speculations back and forth. What do we make of this latest incident with Putin and Trump?
Well, Richard, it's good to be on the air with you again. I'm not surprised that he's denying it. There's yet to be anything that we have proved so far that the world community has proved that Putin has ever agreed about. So, for instance, when the doping scam came out, the Russian anti-doping investigation that was conducted by WADA, this was the exact same playbook that was used. They basically hacked into the WADA database using essentially the same cozy bear, the same pseudonym of the Russian intelligence officials. They released the data in the same way in which they did it when it came to the American presidential election. We have found not only the smoking gun, but we have found the same actors who are all linked to the Kremlin. And as of December of last year, Putin was denying that that entire incident even happened. So I'm not surprised that March of this year, Putin's saying it never happened. They're never going to admit that they had a hand in this.
And even if there was some sort of speculation, why now? Why has it taken, it's almost been, more than 2 months since Trump was inaugurated? These rumors have sort of been going back and forth with regards to what Russia's role was when it came to the U.S. elections. Why wait so long, and how much of it can we actually take that with a grain of salt?
Investigation within the United States has taken time. I mean, there's no question about it. And that is internal politics in the United States. Things are taking time. It's going through Congress. There's an investigation. There's some of that is, playing to it's a political play. But a lot of the facts that are there are undisputable. And so Putin's holding back because he knows that the more he says, the more in trouble he's going to get. So he's just been holding back and waiting for things to go away. And I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon, given the political climate within the United States right now.
Well, speaking of that, with regard to the political climate in the United States, how is the media there sort of taking all of this with what Trump has been, certainly kept the media gurus there busy over the last few months, even before he got elected, but certainly after the inauguration, there has been, every day I think there's some sort of headline. It doesn't seem to be stopping, but how is all of this with Trump and Russia playing out in the U.S. media?
Front and center, there's no question about it. And a while back when I was on your show, I talked about, the institutional mechanisms in the country, in this democracy, just like in India, it's working. That's what the news media is doing. The news media is not making up news. What they're doing is they're following up on leads and holding people in power accountable. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing democracy at its best. Nobody ever said democracy was a clean process. It is a dirty process. It was meant to be a contentious process. And that's what we're seeing. The media is all over it in the United States. We're talking about the Russian connection. We're trying to find out whether that Russian connection was there, how far it went into the family, into the White House, into the people who were in power. We're going to get to the bottom of that. That's what happens in a democracy.
Well, with regards to the FBI as well, we know the FBI is certainly investigating all of this speculation, the allegations, and what Putin says the first time, as we mentioned, after Trump's inauguration. If the FBI at some point does find some credible evidence and some sort of proof, what exactly happens? We saw what happened with the Electoral College, and we saw what happened with the popular vote between Trump and Clinton. If there is some sort of evidence that comes after this investigation, how will, if in any way, change what happens in the White House?
So it's hard to tell, what's going to come out I mean, given the internet, I can talk about internet, I can talk about governance, I can talk about, espionage. I mean, we know one thing, it's going to be very hard, if not impossible, to find a direct smoking gun. It's usually the cover-up that we catch people in. So in this particular case, when we saw with General Flynn, it was lying about a meeting that he had had with the Russians that got him in trouble. So if there are individuals right now in the White House who are, going to be part of this investigation, they're going to be questioned, as part of the congressional investigation, lying about it would not be something they should be doing. On the other hand, if the meetings happen and they said, hey, you know what, we had these meetings, but they were nothing to do with, national security, that's fine. I mean, you're allowed to meet people, especially when you're in power.
And real quickly, Aaron, sort of wrapping all of this up in perspective, just in general, what's the mood there like with Trump's presidency? I mean, certainly people never expected it to be an easy sort of a ballpark, but it's a cake in the walk, but it's just really been one that even here in the Indian media, we've been seeing day after day, this story and that story, H-1B, Trump and Russia, and, there's never a shortage of news when it comes to Trump. So at least he's certainly, being in the most important job, he has kept it very interesting, to say the least.
Oh, to say the least. It's been the first 100 days like we have never seen in a presidency in probably the last 50 years, maybe even 100 years. I'm a big student of history, political history, and I can't tell you the last time we've had such a contentious 100 days. And it depends, right? I mean, there are two camps here. There's a minority camp of people who think this is a change maker and that this is the resistance against change. And then there's the majority camp, all of us who are saying, wait a minute, this isn't change. This is something completely different. This is probably a little bit of amateur hour with a lot of big talk. Who wins out? Time will tell. But for now, I'm taking solace in the fact that the institutions that are meant to work are working. The news media is on it, not just in the United States, all over the world, which means, there's a lot of good that's going to come out of this. First, there's going to be more transparency, right? The Russians who have been doing this, not just in the United States, but, even in different parts of Europe, even all the way to Turkey. I mean, they're making their way down the world. That's probably not going to work anymore as easily. And second, I think even the United States government, I mean, the current government is not going to get away with rules and, arbitrary procedural stuff that's happening right now at the borders and in different parts of the world. That's probably also going to change. So there's a lot of good that's going to come out of this, but it's not going to be a great, clean, smooth process. And I don't think it was ever meant to be.
All right, Arun Vishwanath, thank you so much for all of those updates and your perspective. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And again, for our viewers just joining in, the Senate intelligence hearing happening right now with regards to Russia's influence on the U.S. election campaign, Putin denying any of those involvements.